And nice to speak to you all. And my name is Shane Mooney. I'm from SPeco Environmental Energy and Safety Consultants. And we're here today and we're talking with Jack Grady, the Operations Manager of Grady Window Manufacturers in Charlestown and Mayo, where they have over 100 employees. And as you can see from the photograph on the first slide, they have a substantial presence in Mayo. And they manufacture PVC windows and doors, and also they have a joinery that manufactures timber doors, front doors, etc., to a very high quality, and also some fire doors. So we'll talk about some of that as we go through. I think no more than some of our colleagues who are on the Lean Business Ireland fora, it's very important to recognise that, you know, if we can't measure something, it's very hard to manage it, being the thesis. And measurement is the first step that leads to control and eventually improvement. And if we can't measure something, we can't understand it. If we can't understand it, it's very difficult to control it. And in the event we can't control it, it's very challenging to improve it. So I think we're all very proud of Tony Houlihan and his colleagues over the last few months. But you can see how well data helped them, and they relied on the data very heavily, and they shared the data with all of us to help our understanding of a crisis. Again, in environmental or energy, I think data is very, very relevant and very worthwhile, and it helps us to make informed decisions. So monitoring and measuring is vital. I think starting with the why is very important, and in the why, I suppose our mission is to assist clients with practical advice, try and give them excellent systems and give them training, and enable the clients to meet their goals, be that energy reduction, be that compliance goals, be that continuous improvement journey that many of us are on. Grady Windows have a number of drivers over the last number of years and into the future. Passive windows is a component of the business, and as you know, the B+ energy rating and the A energy rated homes are being promoted and pushed by the bill and regulations, and that's becoming intrinsically required for new customers as we progress through 2020 and into the future. The programme for government has been very informative, I suppose. The retrofit programme of 500,000 homes is documented clearly in the programme for government. There's a lot of fuel poverty and homes where they're putting heat in, but it's going out through the windows and the doors very quickly. So hopefully retrofit will help in that programme. The carbon tax in the programme for government is going to increase by €7.50 per tonne every year from here to 2030. And that's a substantial, I suppose, cost for a business that's using quite a bit of energy, and tons of CO2, obviously, in relation to that. So the goal is 7% annualized carbon reduction, and we can't make that everybody else's job to do. That has to be, we have to look inwards and try and help organizations to deliver that internally, because the goal is a 51% reduction by in the next 10 years. And there's a goal of 0 by 2050. However, hopefully we'll be retired before that. The green procurement agenda is there for all the county councils, for all the public sector. And as Grady Joinery sell into the UK, the green agenda is also there. And construction line is one of the criteria that you quote with, and you've got to upload your environmental policy and your energy policy and your quality policy and your compliance to construction line to quote and to win work in the UK. So all of these pieces of the jigsaw are important to win revenue in the UK and to win business in the UK for Grady Window Manufacturing. And it's an important facet of the business. Green procurement is actually already having a bearing on the sales in 2020. And the National Recovery Plan and EU funds and the stimulus packages that are coming out, we feel they'll have a sustainability terms and conditions applied in some fashion. So that's important to recognise, and I think all businesses need to look at that. And as we reboot our businesses and get back to normal, how can we do that in a holistic fashion, in a way that's more sustainable than it was before, and be that from an environmental point of view and a profitability point of view, and in our perspective, those two things hopefully go hand in hand. It's a family business and the employees care a lot, and I think as we see the under 30s, they would even say that salary is not the only driver for their contentment in employment. They want employers who are environmentally conscious, who are CSR conscious, who are well-being conscious, and all of that. So employee retention in the future will also encompass environmental and CSR in that I suppose offering, as well as meeting the pay requirements and the other needs of employees. Obviously, we've got to be regulatory compliant, whether that's the local county council, whether it's Forestry Stewardship Council, and we need just to be cognizant of all of those different components and make sure we don't fall foul of any of them. And obviously, there are some grants and carbon credits available, and we just need to be aware of those and try and see those as an opportunity and see those as, I suppose, an enabler for progress within the site and within the scope of the site. As I said, we have lots of stakeholders. Those stakeholders are customers who may be builders, or there could be housing associations in Ireland or the UK. Then the actual homeowner, who's the user, they obviously want to put kilowatts of heat into their homes, whether that's from air-to-water heat exchanger or from a range or from a whatever heating source they have, or gas heating. But they want to retain the majority of that, and efficient doors and passive windows and stuff like that will help them with that. Regulators are obviously a stakeholder. Our peers, our networks, obviously we have a deep affinity to pass on the planet as good as we can for our kids. The employees and the employees' families are proud of Grady Window Manufacturing in Charlestown, and being able to have an employer that's easy to commute to, accessible, and it's important that they're stakeholders on this journey and that they feel included in it, and that they feel the benefits of accreditation, and when the auditor is gone and they see that we passed another audit, that they get that positive feedback and gratitude for their input into that audit. Obviously, suppliers are critical as we try and lower the environmental impact of products and supplies. And even banks in the future will probably become more critical. We can see banks beginning to offer loans at lower interest for A energy rated homes, or better environmental performing companies. So that's something that we would maybe look at as a driver. Another driver is climate change. This wasn't on our agenda maybe 3 years ago or 4 years ago, but we've had a few dry spells in Ireland. We've had crops that didn't germinate in April and May this year. And when we just take a German drought level drawing on our chart on the right in 2015, you can see the yellow images. And 5 years later, you can see the red images from April this year. And that's not positive. It's not positive that we've had a water hose ban in Ireland for the last number of weeks. And I think Irish water are under pressure, both on the supply side and also on the treatment side. And I suppose as consumers of water, we need to do that in a responsible fashion, because it takes I suppose treatment of that water, it takes pumping of that water, it takes energy to provide water to site, and then there's a second cost in that it has to be disposed of and treated. I suppose we should all be aware from Enterprise Ireland, and I see Breda from IDA online, that IDA and Enterprise Ireland and Údarás and Gaeltachta all have support here to help you on that lean journey. And the Green Start is the first step. If somebody wants to take it, it's 7 days of consultancy, and it's 80% funded. So the company gets €5,000 grant towards the cost of that. So it's 80% funding. Each company can do up to 3 of those projects. So you could do one on a component like energy, and maybe one on a product-related standard or something else a few weeks later. So if you wanted to take a more chunky project like ISO 50001 or energy efficiency as a bigger project over a year, the Green Plus programs are there. They could be 40 or 50 days of consultancy up to a maximum 60,000 euros. And it's typically funded 50% towards the consultant's fees, and also some of the time of an internal champion is also funded. So I would say that if the company was looking at it, there would be support on both sides there. The last element, I suppose, is SEAI, Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, provide grants under Better Energy Communities grant, and they also have an Exceed program. If you look at the energy entirely in the operation and try and make a step change over a year or 2 years, the Exceed program it's difficult to qualify for, but it is a robust and valuable program to look at. Also, if we do look at energy improvements like we have in Grady's, accelerated capital allowances allows you to write off the costs of energy efficient equipment over 1 year, so you can write it off against your corporation tax and depreciate it in 1 year, as opposed to depreciating it over 7 years, which is more normal. For those of you who want more information, the Green Start and Green Plus is available, and some of the links and some case studies are available, and these slides will be shared afterwards, so you can peruse those at your own discretion. Looking at implementation of the 14,001 and 50,001, the starting line, I sometimes describe it as, where's our line in the sand, and Superman comes to mind. If Superman took the factory out of the field, there'd be a few cows grazing, and if Superman put the factory back in the field, there's emissions to air, there's emissions to water, hopefully there's no emissions to soil, so we don't have any spills, and we use electricity, we use water, we use packaging, we have logistics coming in and out, and all those different environmental aspects need to be thought about. So that's our starting line. We need to look from a strategic point of view at the Paris Agreement and what the goals are, so that we look to map our business over the next number of years, so that they're, I suppose, in line and taking the opportunities that those targets don't become a hurdle in 4 or 5 years that we haven't thought about them. As I said, some of our customers now require environmental policy as well as our quality policy. They also want our environmental policy. We've written those, we've shared them with our employees, we've trained our employees on them, and they've become, I suppose, core values over the last number of months. We've established and monitored systems to monitor our energy and our waste and our water. We've set some objectives, put some procedures in place, and we've looked at the legal register. We have a register that we review periodically every 3 months. We just check how are we complying with the different laws that apply to the business. The 50,001, as you know, it's an environmental policy, I suppose, is where we start. Then what do we do to plan our energy consumption? We look at where are we going to use it, how much are we going to use, and then we begin to monitor and measure it. We do some internal audits and management reviews to see how are we doing it, have we complied with what we said we'd do, and then we can have a management review and an external audit, and it's another set of eyes who can see the wood from the trees, who comes in and helps to accredit the organisation to the standard. I think energy generally, one of this graph is just saying that if we do it in an ad hoc fashion, sometimes we take a fit and we start working in energy and we make cuts and make some minor investments and we drive it down 5% or 7%. But if we take our foot off the gas and look at the next shiny new thing, or get distracted with the business of life, that energy tends to creep back up again, and we don't have the disciplines without the standards in place. So then we just tend to go back into the same cycle. hurry up and stop is a good analogy, I suppose. If we look at embedded energy management, we make initial savings, then we have a team in place, we might have an energy champion working on it, they begin to drive down energy, we do some housekeeping, we do some investments to take 4 or 5 or 10% out of the energy, but we've got to lock those wins in, and we've got to make sure that those savings are retained and not just lost. So we've got to embed the culture and keep the housekeeping elements in place and work on the culture to make sure that it's there for the long term. An energy champion can help us to monitor the energy use. We've got an energy monitoring system which is clipped onto various distribution panels, and it breaks down the load for various areas in the business. There are procedures in place we can check against. There's preventative maintenance schedules to check, is the compressor in good shape? Could it run 2 or 3% more efficiently if it was maintained better? We want to switch off equipment at lunchtime while people aren't here, while they're gone out for their break. In the evenings and weekends, we just want to minimize the base load or anything that's in standby, just because that's energy that we don't need to use. So we're encouraging people to turn off equipment and to manage it as efficiently as possible. And we have an energy monitoring system, which is EFT. We have an energy champion in various buildings, but this is a normal distribution for a day, for example, which shows the night, some of our heating equipment ramping up in the morning before we come into work. Then we come into work. Then you have maybe 11 o'clock break with some of the equipment being turned off. And then you have a normal distribution in the afternoon while we're productive. You can see a lunchtime dip where things are being turned off, and then it tapers away in the evening when we start to turn off equipment and shed some of that load again. We try to minimize that base load, as I said. We've worked on energy consumption, and you can see that the kilowatt hours reduced significantly from year 1 to year 2. You can see that the kilowatts as an energy performance indicator reduced by more than significantly, I suppose, and we're proud of those savings, and we'll go through some of the projects that have delivered some of those savings. We did some regression analysis on the different loads. It's not as easy for us to shed load, and I suppose we need to just push every different machine individually, so that it wasn't as easy to shed load. I suppose one of the important things to be recognised about energy is if we can save 50,000 euros in energy, that 50,000 euros is a displaced cost and hopefully falls to the bottom line. If we need to make 50,000 more profit, we've got to make sales of well more than 500,000 for 50,000 profit to fall to the bottom line. So I think any time and effort invested in saving energy allows that money to fall to the bottom line, and it's a lot easier than trying to increase sales. Sales takes a lot of effort, a lot of pushing, a lot of manufacturing, a lot of shipping, etc. So sometimes there are quick wins to be had there. So please look at those things. So one of the areas that I suppose we looked at was lighting. We were fortunate enough to apply for and secure a loan, a grant from Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, and we looked at all our lightings, did an audit, and based on that audit, we applied for a grant and secured it. We're saving about 50,000 euros per year in electrical costs, in energy costs, on the kilowatt hours saved on lighting. If you see, roughly we were using nearly 600,000 kilowatts, and that was going to cut 200,000 kilowatts. So the saving was approximately 50 grand. This was at proposal stage, and that's not exactly how the project was implemented, but it just shows you the saving. There are other benefits from LED lighting in that they're very long life, they're energy efficient, the brightness and intensity is better, the color range is available, the reliability is fantastic. The lighting for QC and for the factory does feel brighter, it does feel airier, and it does make life a little bit easier. You can see from the lifespan of halogens is, let's say, up to 4,000 hours, whereas LEDs are up to, let's say, 40,000 hours. So there's fewer maintenance interjections, I suppose. Grady's planned and worked on planning permission and grid connections, and put in a wind turbine that's 85 meters high, and it's 2.3 megawatt wind turbine, and it's contributing to the plant's energy, and it's also exporting to the grid, and it's worked very well to date, and everybody's very pleased with the project that's ongoing now. It has a significant displacement of energy because we can supply quite a lot of our own from renewable power as opposed to buying it off the grid. Dust extraction is something that we talked about for quite a while, and it's a challenging project. These dust is hard on motors. Motors wear out, and old motors are energy inefficient compared to new variable speed drives. So we did some analysis, and we looked at ductwork, we looked at dampers, we looked at filtration, and we looked at space heating, and various projects came along and demanded heating for paint drying and paint and other processes. So we were putting in more gas heating, using up gas, and more even electrical heating in places, using up electricity. We looked at Exceed last year, and quite a lot of due diligence was done around this time last year, and an application was made to SEAI, and SEAI are funding a project approximately 40% to retrofit in a biomass boiler and improved extraction control. So that'll help space heating, it'll improve the thermal comfort in winter, and hundreds of tons of waste will be used, I suppose, to heat the premises as opposed to gas. The waste wood burner will be delivered between here and September, and we'll save 200,000 kilowatts at least, and we'll probably displace 150 tons of CO2. And hopefully, while there's a big investment to do it, and with COVID and Brexit and all of these things, it's a challenge to put money into the business, but we believe that the ROI is hopefully less than 5 years with the support and with the project as currently scoped. Air leaks is a pet hate of mine. We did some analysis and identified 42 different air leaks, labeled them high, medium or low air leaks, and then we eliminated the air leaks, and estimating about 150,000 kilowatts of air could be saved from different leaks. It's a difficult atmosphere when people are running different air power tools. They get pulled, and some of the pipe work gets old. So coming up to maintenance periods in factories now and at Christmas, it's an opportunity to try and do air leak detection, see what can be eliminated. I put in a question there: has anyone tried to blow up a balloon with holes in it? And that's effectively what your compressor is trying to do all day, every day, when out of that fixed pipe system, there are loads of holes, and the equipment at lunchtime or in the evenings or at weekends, the equipment is not consuming it. But if there's holes in the balloon or in the pipe work, then the compressor is working hard to do that, to try and keep up with the demand. Also, I suppose we also asked the question: why would you circulate air at 10 bar if 8 bar would drive your equipment, or 8.5 bar would drive your equipment and work just as effectively, because it costs more to drive the compressor harder and distribute the air at that higher pressure. So it's about 7% per bar as an approximate rule of thumb. So there are, 15 or 15,000 plus of revenue savings by optimizing compressors, looking at air leak prevention, and looking at the kilowatts per cubic meter of air provided. We've looked at water. We looked at reducing hazardous waste and treating them properly, whether they're aerosols or whether they're wipes or paint or etc. We reinstated some diesel bunds and double skin tanks to reduce the risk. We put in extra bunding for paint with the organisation, did some noise monitoring, did some rainwater being used for washing trucks, water testing and savings done. And Forestry Stewardship Council is something that we also managed, and CE marking is something that's ongoing. I suppose on a broader on the broader agenda, the government in our getting back to work, we're looking at all the different things from education, building retrofit, ecosystems, R&D to try and get products, as I said, to passive and other things like that. The market is changing. Danone are gone carbon neutral in the news this week. Microsoft are putting a lot of money behind getting carbon negative by 2030. And Nestle are putting $2 billion into displacing plastic packaging, and sustainability, circular economy is also the agenda item, and we're looking at other drivers. We also have logistics, company vans, trucks, and here's just a slide showing that it might have cost 70 cents per kilometre. Hopefully with electric and with other fuel sources in the coming years, that can reduce, so we can, I suppose, reduce the overhead in the business. Solar is something that will be looked at. Solar costs are reducing generally, and hopefully they'll continue to reduce as the volumes of solar increase and the manufacturing capacity increases. So solar is an option. There's plenty of roof space in the factories, as you saw from the first slide. So it is an option to supplement the wind with more PV. I think working from home, working remotely, maybe reducing the amount of sales people going to sales calls and all of that is an aside. But I just thought that coronavirus showed that Zoom calls, including this one, went from 10 million up to 300 million daily participants. And I think if that's an indicator of some of the changes that we're getting into, I think we need to just be aware of them. Digitization is also going to be significant, and we just need to embrace that, and we're embracing it with some of our online monitoring. I'm going to hand over to Jack Grady, and Jack will take you through some of the slides on from a Grady perspective. Thanks for your time and your attention.
Hello everybody, my name is Jack Grady. I'm the operations manager here in Grady Window Manufacturing in Charlestown, County Mayo. Just briefly to explain, we're 40 years here in business. We'd like to think that our business has been built on a solid foundation, and we're continually looking at various ways to try and ensure that our business will be strong going forward into the future. So we decided to go about introducing ISO 14001. How do we go about that? Well, we introduced the idea to our employees and to get them to buy in. We're very conscious of the environment, and going forward, it's obviously, as Shane mentioned earlier, in terms of even the new program for government, we say where it talks about, we'll say the carbon emissions and the cost per tonne, etc. So basically we decided to look at what we could do here. So the first thing we decided to do was look at monitor and measure. Basically we decided that we'd monitor our waste segregation. It was the basic place to begin. The old saying is what gets measured will be minded. So basically, rather than putting everything into a bin, you look at, well, what are you actually putting into the bin? For example, we'd have various offcut of metals and so on, and all of a sudden, if somebody is sweeping up the floor and they're not actually watching what they're putting into the bin, well, there could be a little bit of weight from the metal. So obviously, when you go and you do that, next thing, obviously, the weight is considerable, thus the cost per tonne is increased, So we are a family business. Sorry, I'll go back here a bit. Sorry. Just 1 second here now. So we decided, so anyways, to monitor and improve our waste segregation. Then we decided to monitor and manage our water consumption and improve our chemical management and spill response. And also that has helped us to ensure compliance to EU and Irish legislation. For example, wastewater discharge. We're also monitoring our noise levels, and also it has been a great way of us really managing to improve our housekeeping. Overall, obviously, as I discussed earlier on, this has all helped us reduce our cost, everything from cost of waste disposal right through to the main benefit being the electricity cost. Because of the EFT monitoring system that we have in place, we're now able to see what electricity that we're using, where we're using it. Obviously, there's various departments within our organisation, and then we can see what are we actually using within those areas. That helps us then to actually look at, we say, what machines we have on, when we have them on, why do we need to have them on, do we need to have them on at certain times? And it also identifies very, very clearly if somebody made a mistake and walked off and left a machine on, for example, in the evening, and next thing you look back at your records and say, hold on, we had a spike here, we're over and above, and then you can get to the bottom of that and then say to yourself, well, look at what are we going to do in terms of putting measures in place to make sure that that won't happen again. As it said earlier, you know, we're a family business, 40 years here, and because of that, we're very cautious in terms of what energy we're using. Again, look, we always thought that you know, we were good, but there's always ways of doing everything better. Look, with the help of professionals, services, we soon realised other opportunities existed, and plenty of opportunities more for improvement. Example being the LED lights. Our goal now is to deliver the same productivity in the most energy efficient way. For example, Shane mentioned earlier, hopefully our biomass boiler later on in 2020. In terms of resource requirements, time, well, obviously time is needed to support, time is needed as a support as everybody is busy. The financial resources, grant support helped us, but we invested our own money too, and with the expected return on the investment. Appropriate consultants to identify the gaps and the opportunities. The energy management system helped us see the cost per area, like I detailed earlier on. And obviously, as part of the auditing and reporting, we can see on an annual basis how we're doing. So in terms of our goals, our first and most important goal was to achieve ISO 9000, 14001 and ISO 9000, 50001 through certification. Improvement measures such as reducing energy consumption on site by 5% in the next year, improve our waste segregation and our water consumption. In terms of what we've learned, okay, when we've been audited, it's important to have a good auditor as the company seeks the improvements. A poor auditor might help you pass and achieve certification. However, it will not support continual improvement. If you have a poor auditor, request a new one. It takes time to work on the culture and engage employees. I think because we're a family business and we lead from the front, people actually, we say really buy into that. I'm a firm believer in as do as I do and also do as I say. But as an example, if people see me checking out what we're on and asking the questions in particular about the likes of energy use and why this and why did we leave that machine on? Do we need to leave that machine on? It makes them think for themselves. We must always find ways to work in management systems, otherwise we will not deliver continual improvement And a very important thing here is obviously communicating our achievements to the clients, the suppliers, but also the employees, you know, because they can actually see the results of what we're doing. At the end of the day, all employees want to see a good organisation and want to work for a good organisation. So thank you very much.
Okay, Mairead, do we want to look at some of the questions that are coming in?
Absolutely. Thank you both for such a very informative presentation. Without doubt, there's incredible detail there, and you both have to be commended in the effort that you've made to even get this far. And really, it was incredibly informative. There are a couple of really good questions that have come in, and thank you all for contributing. So one of the first questions that came in was from Ronan McGlade. So he said, thank you, Shane, and well done in achieving ISO 5001. While you invested in wind renewables, have you any plans to add bio or solar to energy efficiency plans in the future, particularly as RESS1 grants will soon be awarded? Do you want to come in on that one there, Shane?
I think solar PV is an option, and we will be using biomass for heating, and it will also help to dry the paint in the paint lines. It'll also help, I suppose, the stability of the temperature. So some products are I suppose, susceptible to changes. So if you come in and it's 8 or 10 degrees, they prefer it to be up slightly higher for stability. So to answer the question from an investment perspective, biomass will be done this year for heating and for paint drying, and I think solar PV will be on the agenda, but probably not this year.
Okay, good stuff. Ronan, I can just see you on video. Has that answered your question there, Ronan? Yeah, good. All right, so Helen Downs from the Chamber of Commerce. It's I suppose a question for you both. Helen has asked, these are challenging times for everyone, but for smaller businesses, have you any advice? Do they engage with other companies to secure funding, or is it done in isolation? So there's two questions there. Either of you want to come in on that?
The first one is about smaller companies. Absolutely. So same as there's lean for micro. Some of the LEOs are looking at rolling out green for micro in the coming months. So I would suspect between here and the year end, there will be green for micro for the smaller organizations with less than 10 employees. There are some quick wins in, I suppose, energy and waste, and hopefully the Green Start and something like that might help some of those smaller companies. So yeah, there are, I suppose, some of the smaller companies with less than 10 would have probably also maybe engaged with better energy communities, where they're put into a package of measures with some homes and with community initiatives, and in an envelope of projects, sometimes they get some support of maybe 30% funding for an energy retrofit or something like that. But better energy communities is something to keep an eye on, I suppose, in the medium term.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Shane. Brito O'Toole from the IDA has thanked you both for such a super case study. Which of the interventions created the greatest saving for the plant, and which was the most challenging to embed in the organisation? That's a great question. Two great questions, Brito.
I'll take that, Jack, if that's okay. I think one of the best wins is related to both, Brita, to answer your question. The LED lighting project, it's challenging to apply, it's challenging to get support from SCI for that grant. It's hard to roll it out in the time frame that SEI wanted to roll it out and to retrofit it into an operating plant. With our electricians that worked, but I suppose it had the biggest, was challenging to do, but it had a big organizational impact in that everybody understood that there was 65, 70, 75% energy savings across the lights. They couldn't believe that. They couldn't believe that the lighting was better. They couldn't believe the look and feel of the plant was better. And that was, I suppose, a benefit for embedding further energy savings in that they saw that win. And I think probably the extraction and biomass is going to be a substantial challenge this year. But like everybody knows, a wind project takes 5+ years to do feasibility on, to do planning on, and nothing could be more difficult. But it's a super legacy for the directors and for the family to have a wind turbine of its scale in the west of Ireland, and it's a super achievement, but it's a complex project.
Without doubt, and congratulations to you both. Breda has just come in there and has just said we are very challenged by the cost of energy in Ireland to Europe generally. So good to hear the benefits of these interventions, and well done to you both on that. Our final question is, Joe Ahern has sent his congratulations to you both on a great presentation, and he said you've demonstrated the significant savings that can be made. Do you know what percentage of Irish manufacturing companies have been accredited the ISO 1401, sorry?
Joe, good evening. There's no clear data because there are different accreditation bodies from Ireland and the UK, from SGS, Certification Europe, and SEI, etc. It's in the low hundreds. I'd say the penetration is probably definitely less than 15%. I would have thought the 50,001 as a management standard probably is the quickest one for a payback. It gives you the most savings quickly. And the uptake of that is also quite low. And in Ireland and in the UK, there is a law called SI 426. And for those who are employing over 250 people or turning over more than 50 million, they have a requirement to do an SI 426 audit. And an SI 426 audit is a detailed energy audit, which could cost 5, 7, 10,000, depends on the complexity of the business and the size of it. And I suppose my discussions with Breda in IDA and Kathleen and others in Enterprise Ireland is that anybody who is considering SI 426 should potentially consider taking that money and using it for an ISO 50,001, because SI 426 is a photograph in time to say how much energy you're using and what the opportunities might be. But that's only a photograph in time, whereas a management system is there for a long time and you get a better return on that investment. So I think the ISO 50,001 will, I suppose, fulfill your requirements to have an energy management system to meet SI 426. And NACI as a body and the government as a regulator have to ask those companies to do an energy audit and to drive energy improvement. It's been pushed a lot harder in the UK, but it's only a matter of time until it's pushed a lot harder here.
Just a final question in there to Shane and Jack. Have you looked at energy as a service with a finance partner to avoid CapEx requirements?
No, we haven't looked at that in any great way. I think it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of, I suppose, a very clear understanding of all of your fixed components and all of your equipment, what they're using and stuff like that. And this business continues to invest in new equipment and changes our internal. So I'm not sure that we're at the maturity level or we're embedded enough to engage with energy as a service, but it is something that will suit some companies. But it's obviously on the agenda for some companies, but right now it's not on the agenda right now here.
Thank you, Shane, for that, and thank you, Jack. It has been most informative. Before we finish up, I just want to play a little video for you all. Next week, our workshop is on managing peak demand and how lean principles have supported on post and how they manage their increased Christmas demand. I happen to have been privileged to a presentation on this last year with the Leading Edge group, and you know, it's definitely incredibly informative, and it's going to be a wonderful workshop. I'm just going to play you a little video that the presenter, Pat Cullinan from the Leading Edge group is going to tell you a little bit about next week's video.
I am Pat Cullinan of the Leading Edge Group. This Thursday evening at 6:30 p.m, I'll be giving a presentation that will teach people how lean principles were introduced to manage peak demand at Unpost through Christmas and COVID-19. In this session, you will learn how value stream maps, standard work, and capacity and demand models were developed to achieve a 100% increase in parcel volumes. I'll be joined by David Murray, Head of the Mail's Operational Excellence at Unpost, and he will give a presentation on how his company achieves significant success in managing peak and unplanned demand. The registration link is in the text below, and places are limited to 100 people. See you there.
So that's a little video that we're going to send out on social media next week. We have 2 questions we'd like to ask the audience. So you should be seeing a question up on your screen there as to, did you learn something new on this webinar this evening? So if everybody could answer that for me. We're all lean people here, so we're all into data and making sure that we can appreciate that our work has an impact. Okay, give that. And the second question. Actually, what I can do there is show you the results. I'm not sure if you can see that now. So it's a 92% of a yes and 1% of a no. Shane, that might have been you. But I want to say thanks. Thanks for that. So the second question doesn't seem to be posted, but that's totally fine. So we're going to close off this evening's webinar if nobody else has anything to add. I just want to thank our 2 speakers this evening, Shane Mooney and Jack Grady. I think there's a unanimous vote that they did incredibly well. It was incredibly informative. I want to thank you, the audience here this evening. I said it has been recorded. It will be available on leanbusinessireland.ie. And if I could just encourage you all to go to leanbusinessireland.ie, and in the top right-hand corner, there is a Join Us tab, and that will allow you to get information from all the regional networks across the country. And in the meantime, wish you all a productive end to your week, and thank you very much.
All right, I'd just like to say thank you for giving us this time this evening. Very much appreciated, and well done to yourself for setting this up this evening. Thank you.
There's a team behind it now, Jack, so I won't be taking any credit. Thanks very much. Take care.
Thanks, Roy, and thanks all for attending, and thanks to Grady Joinery as well. Thank you.
Thank you.